It's a special National Signing Day edition of Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here, Marcus Fuller from the Star Tribune with me, Cassidy Hettesheimer with me from the Star Tribune as well. We've got 10 notable signings coming up on Signing Day Wednesday. 10 notable Minnesota high school athletes that you guys should all know about. Maybe you know about some of them already, but Marcus and Cassidy are going to help you learn even more. Marcus and Cassidy, how you guys doing?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, doing well. Can't complain.
Busy time of the year for everybody, right? But especially the recruiting world with signing day, like I said, Wednesday. Pretty much everything except for football signs right now on Wednesday. And Marcus, I think we'll start with you. Let's talk girls basketball. Who are some of the notable recruits that we should know about that are going to be, either that we know where they're going or that maybe there's still an element of surprise as to where they're going to go?
Well, first off, appreciate being on here as always, and this time not talking Gophers necessarily. So
No,
I don't know if it's a first for me, but it's pretty cool. And joining Cassidy as well. First off, I like to talk about Jordan Odie. Maple Grove standout. She's a senior, number one senior in the state, class of 2025. And really, we didn't include Aaliyah Crump on this list only because she is not currently a high school player in Minnesota. She transferred from Minnetonka to Mount Verde Academy in Florida. She's a 5-star. She's going to Texas. Jordan is now the number one recruit in the state in the senior class, and she's going to Michigan State. Very cool story in her committing to Michigan State. Her coach, Robin Freilich, ended up showing up at her band concert. And she plays the sax, and it was really interesting just to see the side of recruiting that you don't always notice. I did write about NIL and included Jordan. She talked about it being a factor, but not necessarily the main factor in her decision. And a lot of these recruits, NIL is a big part of the conversation. They have collectives that the recruits can talk to now. And also they're making money in high school as well. So Jordan was really good with that. We met up with her at Fall League at Hopkins and a few other recruits. So that's a real interesting story. If you can check it out, it ran this weekend. Jordan is signing with Michigan State on Wednesday. Addie Mack is the number 3 recruit, or actually number 2 now in the state behind Jordan. Jordan and Addie, they were on the same AAU team with the Minnesota Fury this summer. And a lot of people know Addie Mack. She was a 3,000-point scorer last year. She was the 5th fastest, I think, in state history to reach 3,000 points. If you watched her score last year, you'd wonder why she didn't get to 3,000 sooner. She had 50 points in the state tournament to finish 3rd. And Maple Grove Minnehaha Academy with Addie Mack, they actually defeated Crosby Ironton and Tori Orline that's headed to the Gophers. And Tori's a junior, class of 2026. She is the number 2 recruit in the state behind Madden Greenway. And so the state of basketball in Minnesota is the state of hockey always, but it's the state of basketball for a long time, and girls basketball has been a big part of that. It was great seeing the atmosphere at the Big Ten tournament for 2 years. Not only with Caitlin Clark, but the Gophers and a lot of teams within the Big Ten that did have Minnesota players and talent, and that continues to grow basketball in the state. And so Addie Mack, for sure, we'll see where she signs. She hasn't committed yet. She's got a slew of high major schools. Maryland, Northwestern, Michigan, Illinois are some of the schools that she's considering. Maryland, obviously, perennial Big Ten power. And I wouldn't be surprised if she tries to go to a school like Michigan that already has one of the state's top players recently in Olivia Olson. And the last player of the girls that I included is Kendall McGee. She is not a player that last season was able to play because of a knee injury. but she did play with Olivia Olson. That's why I mentioned Olivia. Benilde St. Margaret, as a sophomore, she averaged 20 points a game, and very highly recruited at that time. Gophers, Iowa. Obviously, she ended up committing to Creighton, but she was a highly recruited player at the time, and Creighton kept recruiting her after the injury. 5'10" point guard, and I expect her to have a really good senior year. And those are the three girls that I mentioned, but there's several other Division I expected signees on Wednesday, and we're going to have a list that includes them, not necessarily on this one, but for sure, kudos to the young ladies that'll be signing on Wednesday besides these three.
Yeah, it looks like a really good class this year. Like the three you mentioned, doesn't seem like any of them are going to Minnesota, but like you mentioned, Minnesota's got one of the top 2026 recruits, and it's just kind of all over the place as to where these kids are going to wind up. And like you said, NIL plays a bigger role in any of this than any of us could have imagined. And I'm imagined too, Marcus and Cassidy, like your story pointed out. I'm sure a lot of people don't even realize that like some of these athletes can make money as soon as high school.
Yeah, I mean, I did talk to a volleyball player from my story. Cassidy could talk about her in a minute. But I think that, they're realizing that their brand starts in high school. Minnesota is one of the states, I think 40 states that they can make NIL during high school. And, it's about social media. And I think all these athletes are taking advantage of that, or at least thinking about it before college.
I can definitively say that my brand did not start in high school, but that's just me. Cassidy, like Marcus said, that was kind of good foreshadowing, good tease to a couple of volleyball players on this list. Tell me about them, please.
Yeah, so I'm fresh off the state volleyball tournament over at Excel Energy Center this weekend, which was a fun, 4 days of 3 days? They all blur together, but of really solid, fun volleyball. And definitely one of the standout players there, and who's just in general been a top recruit, ranked in a ton of volleyball rankings within the state, has been Carly Gilk over at Champlain Park. She's headed to the Gophers next year, and is actually one of 2 top 3 recruits by volleyball site Prep Digs that are going to the Gophers, getting 2 in-state recruits. I'm sure big for the program with Gilk, and then McKenna Garr over at Rush City. But yeah, Gilk's just been a tremendous all-around player for Champlain Park this year. She's our All-Minnesota Player of the Year, led the team in both kills and digs as an opposite hitter. And she finished runner-up with the Rebels this weekend to Lakeville South in a really thrilling 5-set attempt at a reverse sweep for Champlain Park. And even though Lakeville South came out on top, Gilk was a big standout player. And when we spoke with her for our Player of the Year coverage, she talked a little bit about, wanting to originally go out of state. She, described herself as a really outgoing person who loves to travel. And, like some players have been, is just, interested in testing the waters outside of Minnesota. But her cousin went to the University of Minnesota and toured her around campus. And, she developed a strong relationship with the coaching staff at the Gophers, and eventually decided like, hey, no, like, I want to stick around here. I want to play in front of a home crowd. And that really grew on her. So, that's a big get for the program, as is McKenna Garr. 2 really notable signings. And then one of the other big volleyball commits who's signing on Wednesday, it wasn't at the state tournament, but Messiah Bettis over at Burnsville. She's been a big all-around player for Burnsville. Very powerful outside hitter. I got to watch her play as well. The placement of some of her line shots was just pretty exceptional. Set a new school record there, and in 2022 helped them end a state tournament drought that I think was going on about 13 years at that point. And she's been tasked with doing a lot for Burnsville. Not as strong of a program in recent years, but it's definitely improving year after year, and she's been a big part of that. And when I spoke with her, she was just talking about being excited to really test herself against some of these Big 12 teams and jump in at Iowa State. I think they're currently sitting at like 9-13 right now, but a lot of their matches have been, 3-2 losses. They're taking sets in all but 2 of their losses. So I think, getting to be there and, try to position ourselves as, maybe the cutting edge that can help turn some of those losses into wins is a really cool opportunity there with the Cyclones.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like but players have different motivations for going different places, but I do like the idea of going somewhere and kind of getting in on the ground floor and trying to elevate a program. So cool that she is attempting that. Kind of sounds like the same thing she maybe did at Burnsville and try to help turn that program around as well. Marcus, tell me about a couple boys basketball players on our list of notable prep recruits signing this Wednesday.
Yeah, I appreciate Cassidy mentioning Carly, so we can get a Gopher recruit in there, because
good job.
For basketball this year, there won't be any in-state for the ladies or their men, but the number one player in the state is actually a debate. Prep Hoops has Chase Thompson as number one, and Rivals and 24/7 has Tommy Aneeman as number one. Tommy's actually from North Dakota, from Fargo.
Shout out.
Yep, transferred in. I've actually been, not a lot of people know because I don't have it in my bio, but right after college, I ended up in Minnesota, but I did end up in North Dakota for a little while.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, covering.
Well, that's where I'm from, right? I'm from Grand Forks, so yes.
And yeah, so Grand Forks. That's why I mentioned it. I did work there for a little bit. Shout out to Grand Forks Herald.
Wow,
really helped my career. But hasn't come a long way, I guess, from North Dakota. Just like Mike hasn't come a long way from North Dakota to get
right.
here. But he did take over the state as soon as he got here. And in fact, he was already an AAU player here in the state at Howard Pulley, and in the spring he went from just a couple Division I offers. It didn't take too long, and he already gained almost half the Big Ten and several other high major conferences. They ended up picking Notre Dame over the Gophers in Iowa, and in Nebraska. And it's nothing, no knock on the Gophers at all. I think they recruited him very hard. But again, sometimes these kids want to go out of state, and he's one of them that really fell in love with Notre Dame and their program. And, like Cassidy was talking about Iowa State for volleyball, Notre Dame's struggling a little bit with their new coach. He's there for a couple of years now. But he's going to come in there and arguably, help turn that program around. I think at the time when Tommy committed to Notre Dame, they had the number one recruiting class in the country, including some other 4-star recruits, but they're top 5 at this point. So, he's in a rebuilding situation, but with a lot of talent coming in. Chase Thompson from Alexandria, he's still in the state tournament with football, I believe, in the semifinals. He's a quarterback, 6'8" quarterback.
That's tall for a quarterback. Jeez.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how many quarterbacks I remember that had that size. But he's definitely one. Yes, you're gonna. I'm trying to think. Isn't Joe Flacco's about 6'7", isn't he?
Yeah. He's probably the tallest quarterback I can think of. But 6'8", that is tall for a quarterback.
He's listed as 6'6", I see.
Yeah, and he's he's just a natural athlete. In football, obviously he's got the talent, but he made it pretty clear that he wanted to play basketball, and he was recruited that way. Clemson ended up getting his commitment, but he did have offers from several other high majors, but I think he narrowed it down to Iowa, Clemson, and West Virginia. And going to Clemson, I mean, he's going to get an opportunity for NIL there. Alexandria is a small town. We don't call it outstate Minnesota anymore. We call it Greater Minnesota, right? But he's definitely a big name in Alexandria. His brother Trayton Thompson ended up playing for the Gophers a few years ago, and then transferred to Stetson. And he ended up going to the NCAA tournament at Stetson. But so the Gophers didn't recruit Chase as much after his brother left. But again, he's arguably the number one player in the state, and he's going to have a chance to make a name for himself playing out of state, just like a Tommy, and they might face each other in the ACC.
Now, here's kind of a philosophical question before we get to the last few athletes with you, Cassidy. Given the rise of the transfer portal and the kind of the mobility of these athletes, the signing day, do you get the sense that signing day is still a big deal for them, that picking this initial school, like deciding where they want to go, this is still a big deal to them, right?
I think it is. I think that if you look at what signing day used to be, it used to be, you waited till signing day to make a commitment.
Yeah.
You had the hats there, and then you pulled it out and say, hey, and one program is, they're going nuts, and the social media has captured some of these fans, right? And I think that you don't have that intrigue anymore. I think there's a lot of players that just commit early, and sometimes a year early. Jordan Odie committed to Michigan State a year ago. Madden Greenway, one of the top juniors, she's making her decision, I believe, soon, in a couple weeks maybe, and then she'll sign next year. So, the intrigue is gone. Addie Mack will still be trying to make a decision here on Friday between several schools. I remember when I used to always go to the signing days for a Gopher recruit, and it was gut wrenching, like to see the recruits. I mean, you heard rumors right going in that it may or may not be the Gophers, but then when it wasn't, I mean, it was tough, even for the students that were watching, that maybe didn't know the inside scoop. A lot of them were maybe frustrated a little bit and happy at the same time. And then you had some that picked the Gophers, and then it was like, wow, this is incredible for the program. But no matter what, it's a very, very cool experience, and just the imagining like what the family and the players going through, because they all get to experience it together. I like just being at that, in that environment. And hopefully I can be there for one of those recruits this week.
Yeah, and I know what you mean, kind of about the whole, like, there isn't much suspense anymore. Like, there is very rarely the, putting on the hat, on the signing day, and kind of psyching people out like that. But, and I can understand that, for some of these high level recruits, there's probably some relief that comes with, I picked a place, like, people aren't going to be, asking me all the questions, and, I put it out there publicly. But in talking with some athletic directors and coaches, ahead of coverage of signing days, being there in person or whatnot, I think that, for schools that do hold some sort of, morning or after school celebration, I think it is cool that, students still get a chance to celebrate in person. And, whether they're going D1 and we're talking about them on a podcast like this, or, they're going D3, like, I think that those things, those ceremonies still kind of serve as like a means of like leveling the playing field to make sure everybody gets celebrated. Because, people might be getting like articles written about them on 24/7 and, talked about in podcasts. But, in reality, like, a lot of these athletes are achieving their dream no matter what level they're playing at. I know I could never have played like Division I athletics in college, but I know if I had decided to want to play D2 or D3, like, I would have still wanted to be celebrated. So I think it's like a cool opportunity to do that and kind of preserve that element of the process and that celebration. So I'm excited to get to see some of them.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the high schools do a good job of making sure that they're all notable. They generally have a table where they're all sitting there, with their respective school cap or what have you. And they might, the applause might be a bit louder, for the person going to the Gophers or a particular Division I team. But generally, again, if you have the family there and they're excited about signing, I went to junior college right out of school, and there was no signing day for junior colleges, but it was still an important step for me to try to get to, Division I, which didn't happen. But, the fact that the matter is, like I said, and you said, they're all celebrated together. And I know Star Tribune will do our best to cover as many people, or make sure to mention as many people as we can. And if we miss anybody on this podcast or on our list, give us a shout on email or social media, and we'll for sure try to get them the next time around.
Well, Cassidy, let's hear a few more names before we go. I think you have a soccer player, a runner, and a wrestler to round out our list.
Yes, so I'll tackle soccer first. So kind of a funny story with this one. Well, it's a little bit roundabout, but the very first one of the first things I did this summer when I started here as an intern was the one person I knew from Minnesota is from Rochester, and we played club soccer together in college. She was playing in like a summer league, the Women's Premier Soccer League, which is like a pre-professional, like amateur league for a lot of collegiate players and stuff. Anyway, so I drive down to watch her play, and they're playing Salvo FC, which is the team that Gophers forward Kaya Harper was playing on. And I remember just watching her, and like I knew that she was a good player. And like obviously she's backing that up, like among the top in NCAA in goals scored this season, Big Ten Forward of the Year. But I remember watching and being like, oh wow, like they're right. My friend her team got kind of curb stomped. Sorry, Jordan. But not totally curb stomped, but there was like, Kaya Harper and the Gophers players that were on her team were really high quality. And, looking at the list of Gophers scores this year, a pretty successful Gophers soccer team. A lot of them are seniors or graduate students, and I know eligibility can differ, and, seniors can stick around a little while, but the reality is that, these players will be graduating at some point, and they'll need another source of goals, whether that's incoming recruits, whether that's transfers. And so they'll be happy to have YZ's Tenley Sendin coming in next year. She was Class 3A Miss Soccer this year, very well deserved. She scored 26 goals and helped YZ win a 3A title over Edina, which was a rematch of last year's. And man, just watching Tenley, like, not only can she finish, but she can really create her own opportunities, which I think is big, and kind of reminded me of what I saw this summer when I watched Kaya play. It was, when Sendin turns with the ball at her feet and runs at the back line, like, watch out. Like, she can carry. I think she scored a goal either in the semifinal or final of this year's state tournament that she probably carried the ball, 50 yards and scored from outside the 18. And she's playing against good teams too, full of, other college committed soccer players. So I think she's a real deal, and she'll be a good get for the Gophers.
Awesome. Yeah, that should be, they've had a successful program. Definitely another good year for them. What about the runner on our list here?
Yeah. So this is another athlete I got to see this summer, which was super cool at the state track meet when he won the 1600 and 3200. But yeah, wanted to shout out Robert Matura. I mean, he's been kind of the name in Minnesota boys cross country and distance track these past couple years. 2-time defending state champ in the 5K and cross country, won that just a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, he's committed to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is a good program. They're currently ranked 11th in the nation. They just finished third at ACC, which is a competitive conference. Like, the two teams ahead of them are top teams as well. I believe it was Wake Forest and Stanford. And that program peaked at, I believe, 4th last season. So, the consistently good team. It's funny. It's one of those things where I feel like when you're comparing cross-country times to like collegiate times, you would think like, oh, it's one of the more straightforward sports. It's like, right, they have times, and talking about like, oh, fitting into a system and playing different positions and trying to compare like apples to oranges. But it's really not as apples to apples as you might think, because, in high school, they're racing 5K, college, they race 8Ks often for like NCAA regionals and championships. So, you can't necessarily look at a time and compare it to the collegiate times as easily as you might think. And, they're racing different courses. And, but I sent my brother, who ran cross country, the time that Robert won his PR, which was I believe 14:32 in the 5K, and I sent it to him and was like, is that like would that have really like knocked your socks off if you went to a meet in high school or college or whatever and you saw a kid, that was his PR? And he was like, oh, like for sure.
Okay.
And I think he ran a lot of low 15s this year on different courses. And so, I mean, just a solid times that put him really in the top, couple percentiles of Division I recruits. So cool. I think he'll be one to watch.
And now rounding out our list of 10, a wrestler from St. Michael Albertville.
Yeah, so this was a shout from Jim Paulson, one of our other prep sports reporters. But yeah, Landon Robidoux at St. Michael Albertville. He's going to Oklahoma State, which another good, solid, blue blood program. I believe they're third in the nation heading into this season. But yeah, I mean, again, another solid 3-time state champ in the 157-pound weight class in Minnesota. Has won prestigious tournaments outside of Minnesota. Yeah, and just, solid Minnesota athlete who's been, among the top in the state, going to a really good program and getting recognition for, the work he's put in here. I believe he was a Gophers commit for a little while and then flipped to Oklahoma State this summer. So, good get for a good program.
149-1 in high school. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
The person that beat him, that person, we got to find his name and give him a shout out because I don't know how that happened.
I know,
Landon, if you listen to this podcast, Landon, you can for sure make sure that you'll never lose again. But I want to say Oklahoma State was a program that I covered in the wrestling college championships several times. Them and the Gophers. It's been a long time since I covered national championship wrestling, but them and the Gophers were right there competing always at the top.
I agree. Me too.
Yeah, and so it's crazy to see that we have all these athletes not just going to the Gophers, but going to schools that will possibly be competing for national championships. You'll have to compete with some of the top schools in the country, a blue blood here and there for a top Minnesota player. I mean, it's not just basketball, it's not just football.
Awesome, you guys. Well, hey, I appreciate all the knowledge that you guys were able to share. Glad we got a lot of these names out there in advance of signing day on Wednesday. Sure, more to come. Follow the Star Tribune's coverage this week and beyond. Marcus and Cassidy, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.